If your finance team feels busy but not effective, it's usually a process problem and not a people problem. In this video, I'll show you how to review your finance processes properly, and by the end, the 4 areas that you should always focus on to stop finance slowing the business down. Hi, my name's Alysha Randall. I'm a CFO and author of Financial Leadership Fundamentals, How to Become a CFO in a Startup or Scale Up. And if that sounds interesting to you, then please click on the subscribe button below. So refining your finance processes, isn't necessarily just about being neat and organized, but it's actually making sure that the business can scale without the finance team becoming a bottleneck. And this is really important with startups and scale ups because the growth can be quite extraordinary sometimes. Having, say, 20-30% month on month growth isn't unheard of. So if your processes are quite manual and quite slow, then you can see how if the business doubles in size in 1 year, which again isn't unheard of, you can see how those processes can become really cumbersome and a real problem. So it is one of the biggest mistakes I see in startups and scale-ups. That's finance processes being left alone for too long. They probably worked when the business was smaller or when a process had to be put in place really quickly. And so no one questions them. But then volume increases, pressure builds, and suddenly everything is much harder than it should be. And you might find your finance team are struggling to keep up with the workload. So, as a finance leader, regular process reviews isn't just something that you should say for a rainy day. It is actually a big part of your role and should be taken seriously. So, why process reviews matter more than people realize? So, in fast growth businesses, processes age really quickly, and what made sense maybe 6 or 12 months ago can quickly become quite clunky and manual and completely unnecessary. And the danger is that people get used to them. So, a question I always come back to is this: if the business doubled in size over the next 6 to 12 months, would our current finance processes cope? And if the honest answer is no, then you're already carrying quite a big risk here. And so process of reviews, they're not about perfection, but rather it's making sure that your team isn't wasting their time firefighting or quietly burning out because the way things were done no longer fits the size or the pace of the business. So a simple rhythm works quite well. So quarterly high level reviews to sense check what's not working. And then one annual review to properly reset things. So again, this is not an admin task. It is something that a leader really needs to take responsibility and ownership of. So the 4 areas I always look at. So when I review finance processes, I come back to the same 4 areas every time. And you don't need to do anything fancy. You just need to be honest. So the first one is automation. There is very little justification in 2026 for finance teams to be spending large chunks of time on manual work that could be automated. That doesn't necessarily over engineering or buying a real expensive piece of kit, but it does mean you're being quite intentional. So a practice starting point is to list out the main activities. So accounts payable, payroll expenses, revenue processing, reporting, and among other things. And then be honest. Maybe a simple traffic light system works well. So green is largely automated. Amber means it's partly manual and red means it's heavily manual. So start with the red areas. That's where you'll get the biggest return on effort. And it might be something you might even want to discuss with your financial operations team, if you have one, if it's not just you, or with your bookkeeping team, and just go through each of them one at a time during your monthly catch up. So this automation obviously isn't just about speed and keeping up with the workload, but it does actually reduce errors, improve consistency, and frees up senior finance team to do work that is actually strategic or value adding. The second thing to look at is duplication. So this isn't always obvious because it doesn't necessarily sit within the finance function. So two people might be doing similar work without realizing it, or the same information might be checked, reworked, or reconciled multiple times. So in my experience, duplication often sits between departments and not within them. So you might want to look closely at processes that pass back and forth between finance and, say, sales or operations and marketing. Anywhere where work crosses teams is a prime candidate for duplication. So removing duplication doesn't just save time, but it also reduces frustration and improves working relationships across the business. The third area is simplification. So over time, simple processes can get much more complicated, where people just add new things onto what was once a simple process, and then it just starts getting out of control. So more volume can lead to more checks lead to more steps, and before you know it, something that was quite straightforward, it starts becoming quite painful. So invoice approvals are a classic example. I can see long approval chains that made sense at some point, but now it's just slowing everything down. And when this happens, the best thing you can do is step away from the current process entirely, completely ignore how it's done today, and then to ask, if we were designing this from scratch, right from the beginning, what would good actually look like? And I love a whiteboard brain dump session, and this is a perfect whiteboard brain dump session with your team. So once you've kind of mapped out the ideal, you can work backwards and decide what needs to change. So simplification is often about removing steps and not adding control. Number 4 is collaboration. So finance processes, they absolutely don't sit in isolation. So if finance designs processes without input from the rest of the business, then they can potentially fail. So either people work around them or they create friction that can damage trust. So good process reviews really does involve collaboration with other teams, not endless meetings, but just enough of a conversation to understand what information they need, where things slow down, and what creates unnecessary back and forth. So strong collaboration really does lead to better planning, better decision making, and far fewer surprises. So why this matters for you as a finance leader. So process reviews, they're not just about efficiency, they really are about how you shape the finance function and how you shape the way that finance is perceived throughout the business. So when processes work really well, the team feels calmer, information flows more easily, and finance is seen to be an enabler and a well-oiled machine and not a blocker. And importantly, your team is far less likely to fall over when the volume increases. So your role as a finance leader goes beyond just producing numbers. It's about building a function that can scale and support growth and give business confidence. So regular process reviews is one of the simplest ways to do that. If you want to be a strong and confident and skilled finance leader in the next 12 months, then I've got a 3-step process for you. The first one is to subscribe to this video. I drop a video every single Thursday and we talk about how to be a CFO or finance leader within a startup or scale up. The second one is my book, Financial Leadership Fundamentals. So you can check that out as well. It just goes into these topics a bit more deeper. And at the end of every single chapter is an action plan that you can implement immediately. And the third one is the FLF course, where we even go even more into the same topics, but in much more detail. There are templates that you can download, and we also have Q&A sections every single month where you can ask me your questions and discuss with your fellow finance leaders about the best way moving forward. So if that sounds interesting to you, then just follow the links below. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Thanks.